Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a seriously fascinating set of stories from the tech world, and they're all bound together by two invisible forces that basically govern our entire digital lives: time and trust. Whether we're looking back at decade-old code, tracking the slow, patient march of international justice, or looking forward to the future of artificial intelligence and gaming, these two concepts shape absolutely everything. I'm incredibly excited to guide you through this, so let's get right into it. All right, treating this like our Saturday night tonight's headlines, here is what's on the docket. We are covering a decade of hidden software bugs, hacking government transparency portals, justice for ransomware affiliates, a 10-year Linux backdoor uncovered, the rise of sovereign AI, and rebuilding a gaming masterpiece. Okay, let's dive into this first story. Section 1. Decade of hidden software bugs. This takes us deep into the architecture of the open source web. 10 whole years. That is the sheer unbelievable weight of this number. For an entire decade, from 2014 all the way to 2026, a critical vulnerability was just sitting there, completely silently, in the code of PHP. And if you know web hosting, you know that's one of the world's most popular open source forum software packages. For 10 years, thousands of websites were operating under the assumption of safety. And it proves a terrifying point, right? Legacy code does not automatically equal secure code. Just because something has been running for years without incident, well, that doesn't mean it's safe. So what exactly was this bug? Well, it was a total authentication bypass. We aren't talking about some complex, multi-stage, nation-state attack requiring deep social engineering. Nope. Due to a simple programming error in how session tokens were handled, an attacker could literally just send a single, specially crafted HTTP web request. That is the whole shebang. The system would then recognize them as any target user, even a full system administrator, without ever asking for a password. It's like walking up to a bank vault and just asking it nicely to open. It handed over the keys to the kingdom in a single keystroke, giving attackers total control to steal data, inject malware, or just ruin a forum's reputation. Time for a quick tech and analysis takeaway here. Authentication systems can and absolutely will fail. Defending against this requires a really strict defense in-depth strategy. You need multi-factor authentication, so even if a session is bypassed, there's another check. You need anomaly detection to spot weird login patterns, regular audits, bug bounties, and an architecture of least privilege. Obviously, if you run PHP, you must update immediately. But the broader lesson for all of us is to never, ever blindly trust the lock on your digital front door just because it's been there for a while. Section 2. Hacking government transparency portals. Moving from the trust we place in code, let's look at the trust we place in official government channels, specifically in the state of Maine. Take a look at the red flags column on this incident breakdown. In June 2026, Maine's official attorney general data breach reporting portal suddenly published alerts claiming massive security incidents at Discord and VRChat, supposedly impacting millions of users. But here's the catch. Discord had zero internal confirmation, and VRChat's report used a completely fictitious employee name. These were entirely fake. So how on earth did this happen? Well, because the government portal required absolutely zero authentication to submit a report. Anyone could type anything in, and the system would just instantly publish it on an official government domain. The impact was immediate, and it proves a pretty terrifying reality. Misinformation spreads vastly faster than corrections. It spread like wildfire. Before these fake reports could be verified and taken down, news outlets and search engine bots had already scraped and amplified the false claims. The targeted companies had to desperately scramble to deny the breaches to panicked users and investors. The portal actually had to be taken offline completely just to stop the bleeding of public trust. And this brilliantly illustrates the modern conflict governments are facing today: transparency versus security. Laws are designed to make reporting easy and transparent for the public, and they assume good faith. But in today's threat landscape, you cannot assume good faith. Open portals designed for easy accessibility absolutely must now be gated with digital signatures, email domain validation, and manual review. In the digital age, a government's credibility is a target in itself. All right, Section 3, Justice for Ransomware Affiliates. Let's shift gears now from rapid disinformation to the incredibly slow, patient march of international law enforcement against one of history's worst cybercriminal empires.
$150 million. That is the staggering estimated damage caused by the Conti ransomware group between 2020 and 2022. They infected over 1,000 networks globally. We're talking hospitals, government agencies, critical infrastructure. And they used a vicious double extortion model, meaning they're not just locking up your files, they are stealing them and threatening to release them publicly if you don't pay up. It was a massive, highly organized criminal business.
But, cybercriminals can't hide forever. Consider the downfall of Alexei Litvinenko. He was a Ukrainian national who operated as a Conti affiliate, which is essentially a contractor who breaks into networks and deploys the ransomware for a cut of the profits. The FBI identified him way back in 2021. And then law enforcement just waited, patiently. In 2023, he made the incredibly ironic mistake of taking a relaxing vacation in Ireland, where he was promptly arrested. Following a really lengthy extradition process, in June 2016, he finally pleaded guilty in federal court, facing up to 20 years in prison. It just goes to show that despite VPNs and crypto, global cooperation eventually catches up with you.
Now, interestingly enough, Conti's ultimate downfall actually came from an internal leak after a massive dispute over the war in Ukraine. It turns out even criminal syndicates have major human resources problems. But obviously, you can't rely on criminals betraying each other as your security strategy. Defending against ransomware is a business continuity crisis, not just an IT problem. You must have clean, air-gapped offline backups. You have to segment your network so an attacker can't just move laterally from one machine to another. And you need board-level incident response plans that you practice well before an attack ever happens.
Section 4, 10-year Linux backdoor uncovered. We are jumping right back to the theme of time for our next story. And hey, if you thought the 10-year PHP bug was wild, wait until you hear about the Chinese hacking group known as Velvet Ant. Velvet Ant actually managed to hide inside a major organization's Linux infrastructure for nearly 10 years. How is that even possible? Well, by compromising the very foundations of system access, PAM and OpenSSH. Think of it like this. PAM is the gatekeeper of a Linux system. It checks your password. OpenSSH is the master key administrators use to log in remotely. Velvet Ant subtly modified these core components because they compromised the authentication layer itself. Traditional security tools that were busy looking for malware were completely blind to them. The contrast between typical hackers and Velvet Ant is honestly stunning. Typical hackers do loud smash and grabs, right? Velvet Ant used strategic patience. They created a magic password in the PAM backdoor, giving them permanent admin access. They altered OpenSSH to secretly log legitimate users' passwords to hidden files. And they did what we call living off the land, using legitimate administrative tools rather than uploading custom malware. That made them nearly invisible as they sat there and gathered intelligence for a full decade. The absolutely critical lesson here is simple. Assume breach. If you only protect your applications and data, but you ignore the underlying authentication infrastructure, your security is fundamentally broken. You must implement file integrity monitoring, hardware security modules, and a strict zero-trust architecture. You must continuously verify that the gatekeepers of your system haven't secretly changed the locks on you. Section 5, the rise of sovereign AI. Let's pivot now to the bright side of technological evolution, moving away from digital threats and into the explosive, transformative growth of artificial intelligence in Europe. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer velocity of this growth. We are looking at Mistral AI, a French startup founded by former DeepMind and Meta researchers. They jumped from a €260 million seed round in June 2023 to a rumored €20 billion valuation just 3 years later. I mean, wow! This incredibly aggressive scaling shows a massive, intense appetite from investors for a true European AI champion to rival American giants like OpenAI. So why is this happening? Because nations are waking up and realizing that AI is not just some cool software product. It is critical national infrastructure. Europe wants AI models trained on European data, fully compliant with GDPR. They want strategic autonomy so they aren't completely dependent on American tech or Chinese state-backed competition. To put it in perspective, lacking sovereign AI today is literally the equivalent of a nation lacking its own energy grid. Mistral represents a real blueprint for digital independence. Finally, Section 6, rebuilding a gaming masterpiece. Let's bring the energy up and tap into some pure, unadulterated nostalgia to close us out. Our last story is the legendary return of one of the greatest pieces of digital media ever created, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Yes, Nintendo has officially announced it for the Switch 2. But we need to clearly distinguish what this actually is. There is a massive difference between a remaster and a remake. A remaster, like the old 3DS version, just bumps up the resolution and maybe the textures of the old code. But a remake, which is exactly what this is, that's a monumental, ground-up rebuild. Actually, scratch that, it's a total restoration. We're talking a brand new engine, modern mechanics, full orchestral music, running at a buttery smooth 4K and 60 frames per second.
And why does this matter so much? Because of this number, 99 out of 100 on Metacritic. Since its original release way back in 1998, Ocarina of Time has been widely considered by critics and fans alike as the greatest game ever made, period. Rebuilding it from scratch bridges the gap between the old veterans who experienced it on the chunky Nintendo 64 and a whole new generation of players who get to experience this masterpiece with modern sensibilities. It is the start of a genuine golden age for game preservation and remakes.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. And I really want to leave you with this thought. We are actively remaking a 1998 gaming legend entirely from scratch just to make it secure and functional for the future. Yet, as we saw today with PHPB and Velvet Ant, we routinely leave 10-year-old authentication codes and legacy systems running in the background of our most critical infrastructure completely unchecked. As we evolve technologically, time and trust will remain our biggest vulnerabilities, but also our greatest assets. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.